Recognize the member from Saskatoon, Churchill-Wildwood.
Rise in the Assembly to join in the budget debate this evening. Mr. Speaker, I started my throne speech reply with the question, what's a girl like me doing in a place like this? Tonight, I will start with this question. What does a girl like me think of a budget like this? I feel the need to start by reflecting on what I know about budgets. My father started his career as a life insurance agent and financial broker in 1951 and is still active in his profession today. That's 65 years worth of financial advice. He has kept ledgers throughout his adult life, and I follow the practice as well. He taught me that you need to know where you are spending your money. You need to control your expenses. That was my first experience with budgeting. It is interesting to note that the Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary describes the historical definition of the economy as the management of household affairs and especially expenses. Mr. Speaker, my volunteer involvement with various organizations assisted me with gaining more knowledge about budgets. As president of the Lakeridge Community Association, I took responsibility for the annual budget. As president of the St. Luke Parent Council, I took responsibility for the school year budget, and I still have a copy of the budget that was sent to all school families for input in 2001. As president of the CTV Staff Association for many years, I was responsible for that annual budget. I remember having a conversation with the Vice President of CTV Saskatchewan when I was elected as a trustee with the Greater Saskatoon Catholic Board of Education in 2003. I shared my concern about being responsible for that significant of an operating and capital budget, millions and millions of dollars. He assured me that I was just adding zeros, the principles were the same, and I would be fine. Mr. Speaker, I share this with you to demonstrate that I take the responsibility of budgets and spending other people's money very seriously. Being an elected member of this Assembly, I share in the responsibility of managing a $14 billion budget. I remind myself that I am adding zeros and the principles remain the same. Mr. Speaker, we have moved from a have-not province under decades of NDP mismanagement, where we had a dependence on federal equalization payments to fund our province, to a have province every year since the Saskatchewan Party was elected. I was reassured when our province's credit rating was upgraded to AAA status, the highest possible rating. This rating confirms that the Saskatchewan Party government has a record of prudent spending, paying down the debt, and keeping our GDP ratio the second lowest in the country. This rating is a vote of confidence for sound fiscal management and is tantamount to getting an A+ on a report card. Mr. Speaker, under the NDP government from 1991 to 2007, 56,000 more people moved out of this province than moved in. Since the Saskatchewan Party was elected in 2007, over 85,000 more people have moved into Saskatchewan than moved out. With a population growth of approximately 132,000 people in the last 10 years, you could say that we have 132,000 more reasons to keep Saskatchewan strong. This government is staying true to its election promise that there would be no tax increases and no new taxes. This government has delivered nearly $6 billion in tax reductions since 2007. A family of four with a combined income of $50,000 has seen their income tax reduced by 100% and will pay no provincial income tax in 2016. My husband, who owns a small business, is grateful that we now have one of the lower business income tax rates in the country. That's because the Saskatchewan Party government delivered record income tax deductions since being elected and will not increase income tax during this budget year. This government did not want to increase the tax burden on Saskatchewan people and businesses. This is in contrast to the NDP government that raised taxes 21 times during their 16 years in power. Here is what the Vice President of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business had to say about our budget, and I quote, "I think small business owners will be pleased with the direction of this budget, the fact that they are looking for the government to hold the line on taxes to ensure sustainable spending." End quote. Saskatchewan individuals and families continue to pay the second lowest overall combined provincial taxes and utilities in the country. Mr. Speaker, we want to continue to attract people to our province. We want to continue to attract investment to our province. Saskatchewan residents might ask why we would want our population to grow. We don't seek growth for the sake of growth. More people means an increased tax base to help address the healthcare, education, social services and infrastructure needs of this province. More investment means more jobs and an increased tax base to help address the health care, education, social services and infrastructure needs of this province. That's why, as our Premier has said, and I quote, "The purpose of growth is to secure a better quality of life for all Saskatchewan people," end quote. We need to control our operational spending. That was the purpose of my father's ledger system, to set priorities and boundaries with our household financial management. That means facing the fact that we remain a resource-driven economy. There is a significant shortfall in non-renewable resource revenue from last year's budget due to a significant drop in oil and potash prices. There were difficult choices to make in order to manage the size of the deficit. We're spending money we don't have. It's not easy to make tough decisions, but like our households, when times are challenging and we need to make adjustments to our spending, this government has also made these tough but necessary decisions. Changes were made to programs. For example, the Children and Seniors Drug Plan is rising by $5 per prescription to $25. My constituency of Saskatoon, Churchill-Wildwood has a high density of seniors, and this could impact some of my residents. There will be some social services and assistance program changes that will be introduced to increase fairness and equity and enhance sustainability in this coming year. But I also note that social services and assistance will see an increase of $34 million, or 2.8% in this budget, as this Saskatchewan Party government cares for those most vulnerable. I applaud the $7.9 million for medically fragile children and those with complex needs, as well as the $5.7 million for foster care and extended family care in this budget to support Saskatchewan people in need. Priority areas such as health, education and social services continue to be supported, although the expense growth was not as large as past years. These three areas account for nearly 3/4 of our budget expenses. It was encouraging to hear Dr. Filley, President of the Saskatchewan Medical Association, state, and I quote, "Given the fiscal constraints, I think it's good to see the commitment of the Saskatchewan government in terms of funding our healthcare system to the extent that they have," end quote. Mr. Speaker, some might question the wisdom of moving forward with a budget that includes more than $3.5 billion for infrastructure, the largest single-year capital investment in this province's history. We need to move forward on our capital plan, instead of delaying projects that would hurt our economy and cost more to build in the future. Investing in infrastructure adds to the strength of this province and establishes the structural framework to help the province's economy. Our capital investment supports construction jobs, improves safety on roads, improves the transportation system that is vitally important in this export-driven province. It creates better learning spaces for children and helps in the delivery of quality health care and long-term care. This budget provides significant investment into schools, health care, facilities and highways. We have more roads than any other province in Canada. It is a challenge to keep all those in good repair. As promised in the recent election campaign, the Highways 2020 plan will provide $70 million to repair and maintain highways across this province over the next 3 years. When the work is completed on the Regina bypass in 2019, it will improve transportation of goods and people in our province and increase traffic safety. We will see the completion of 18 new elementary schools currently under construction on 9 joint-use sites in Saskatoon, Regina, Martensville and Warman in 2017. My constituents of Churchill-Wildwood will benefit from the North Commuter Parkway Bridge that this government has committed $50 million towards, along with the federal government and the City of Saskatoon, with $10 million for the bridge in this budget. My constituents will enjoy the new renovations at Holy Cross High School and Ecole St. Matthew Elementary School. My constituents will benefit from the reduction of Regional Health Authority administration expenses by $7.5 million and reinvesting those savings in frontline staff in long-term care homes. We heard on the doorsteps this campaign that reducing health region administration and providing better frontline care is important to Saskatchewan residents. Mr. Speaker, let me remind you that the NDP government eliminated 1,200 long-term care beds. Contrast this to the 15 new long-term care facilities that have been built or are under construction since the election of the Saskatchewan Party government in 2007. My constituents will benefit from the additional $20 million to the Saskatchewan Surgical Initiative in this budget year to help ensure that Saskatchewan continues to have the shortest surgical wait times in Canada. My constituents will appreciate the $14 million in this budget for upgrades to Saskatoon's Royal University Hospital. My constituents will also benefit from the municipal revenue sharing based on 1 percentage point of the PST, or 20% of the total, that gives Saskatoon more than $48.5 million. I remember one of my daughters doing a policy paper on this very topic for a university class before it became a reality. And my post-secondary graduate constituents will benefit from the changes to the graduate retention program that will allow recipients to use up to $10,000 of their GRP benefits towards the down payment on their first home here in Saskatchewan. School boards in Saskatoon will benefit from the additional $5.4 million of school operating funding that is being targeted to support Syrian refugee students, as well as the new childcare spaces that are being developed as part of the new joint-use schools in the neighbourhoods of Rosewood, Evergreen, Hampton Village and Stonebridge. As a Métis person, I applaud the $5 million in ongoing funding for initiatives that support improving education and employment outcomes for First Nations and Métis people through the Ministry of Education. Mr. Speaker, let me remind you that under the NDP from 2000 to 2007, Saskatchewan had the worst job creation in Canada, behind every single other province. The highest rate of First Nations unemployment was recorded under the NDP government at 29% in March of 2006. We understand the definition of an economy is the production, distribution and consumption of goods and services in a given geographical area. But another definition is the careful management of available resources, frugality in expenditures, restraint. Which is why, Mr. Speaker, this government is looking towards transformational change in order to ensure that all government programs and services are viable and sustainable into the future. This government will work to ensure that there are high-quality public services delivered in the most effective and efficient way possible. Change pushes us out of our comfort zone. It challenges our sense of security. But change is how we grow and how we evolve. Heraclitus, a Greek philosopher who was known for his belief that change was central to the universe, said, and I quote, "The only thing that is constant is change," end quote. Why a deficit, you ask? The projected $434 million deficit is the balance needed to ensure the programs and services that Saskatchewan people need and value. It is sensible that this government runs a manageable deficit rather than making severe cuts to programs and services or increasing taxes for Saskatchewan people and businesses. Here is a quote from the Saskatoon Chamber of Commerce. "As long as they have a very clear path to find their way back to balance, we could support a very short-term deficit," end quote. Why an increase in public debt, you ask? I was raised to be allergic to debt. One of my father's favourite sayings was, "Get out from behind the 8 ball," referring to the fact that imprudent money management and debt leaves one in a difficult situation with few options. This debt, however, is due to capital spending that is needed to support the growth of this province. Unlike our neighbouring provinces, this government is committed to returning to a balanced budget by 2017-18. The Saskatchewan Party's vision is to be the best place in Canada to live, to work, to start a business, to get an education, to raise a family, and to build a life. My husband, Jim, and I have done just that. Got an education, lived, worked, raised a family, started a business, and built a life in this province that I love. Our 3 daughters were all educated at the University of Saskatchewan and are all employed in Saskatoon. We want the cycle to continue. It can and it will if we can keep Saskatchewan strong. What does a girl like me think about a budget like this? We have considerable challenges to rise to. These challenges will test our mettle and our strength. In challenging economic times, we find out what we are made of, Mr. Speaker. I believe this Saskatchewan Party government succeeded in finding the right balance between the reality of its revenue and the demands of its expenses. This budget finds a balance between managing our fiscal reality and providing the programs and services that are important to Saskatchewan people. This budget finds a balance between controlling spending, controlling the size of the deficit, and controlling borrowing for capital. Mr. Speaker, let us remind ourselves that our province's economy will rebound as it has in the past. The Saskatchewan economy is diverse. The Saskatchewan economy is resilient, just like its people. The Premier has stated the Saskatchewan people are informed by common sense, that they are a veritable well of common sense. I believe Saskatchewan people will see the common sense in a manageable budget and that common sense will guide our transformational change. As a government, we know we have lots of work to do. As a government, we are striving to do better. Mr. Speaker, my grandparents arrived in this province from lands far away, seeking a better life, a better future for their families in this abundant province. We have that better future. We want that future looking bright with a budget that keeps our province strong and moving forward. Let our freshly clad copper dome of this legislature serve as a beacon of hope that our best days are still ahead. Let us remember that, here in Saskatchewan, hope beats fear. Mr. Speaker, I support this budget moved by the Minister of Finance and seconded by the member from Regina University. I do not support the opposition amendments. Thank you.